Hello everyone, I am Federico Andreotti, PhD candidate at Environmental Science Group at GRS Group at Wageningen University, and I'm collaborating with CIRAD and University of Montpellier in France. Today I'm here for a guest lecture in the course of ethnobotany, and I'm very glad that I can share my experience of my PhD project about quinoa and identity. So let's start. So context, as you may know, quinoa is a well consumed product here in Europe since the 70s, and there are more than 70,000 land races of these crops in the Andes, and today farmers are still cultivating it, following mainly agroecological practices, with keeping this rich diversity within self-consumption, the local market, and export. Quinoa reaches highest interest all around the world thanks to the International Year of Quinoa, launched by the FAO in 2013. This not only increased the production in the Andes, but also help other countries to start producing quinoa all around the world. Not only in Europe, like for instance in the Netherlands, there is a project that is called the Quinoa Company. It is actually based in the Food Valley here in Wageningen, but also in France, in Italy, and also out of Europe, considering Africa, West Africa, and Asia, like Bhutan, and China actually is getting one of the biggest producers now. And why is getting so popular? Because of indeed this high rich in amino acid and vitamins, but also because it's very crop that adapt very fast to the conditions, environmental conditions, so it's very strong against climate change, very resilient crop, tolerating abiotic stresses, and which are normally in the Andes, because you can imagine that this crop is one of the few, together with the bitter potatoes and quinoa, that can resist up to 3,900 meters with very little water. It rains very little in this area in the Andes, and also considering the little nutrients in the soil and the constant erosion by the strong wind, and also the very strong sun, which dry out the water very quickly. So yeah, the plan of the United Nations and therefore worked pretty well, since everyone started to produce quinoa all around the world. And indeed, they were mainly smallholder producers, because you can imagine at 3,900 meters is pretty difficult to have an intense system with tractors. This expansion, as we've seen with this graph, this is an example in Peru of the quinoa boom and bust. So here you can see that in 2013, after the International Year of Quinoa, follow a constant boom of the price paid to farmers, this black line, and also the land used for it. And this is all in Peru, because one little misconception about the meaning of Andes is that it doesn't. Andes is a larger area that goes from the south of Peru, of Arequipa for instance, to the north, so to Puno and Cusco. But the main difference is the altitude. So in Arequipa we are at 1,800 meters, while in Peru we are in Puno we are more than 3,900, which makes condition for working much more difficult, not only for the oxygen but also because these places are very isolated from the main cities. And so this very high increase in land use, it was not only because the farmers start to produce more quinoa in the rural communities, in the high Andes, let's call it like this. It's mainly called altiplano in Spanish, but mainly because farmers from other regions that were able to have access to machinery and tractors and certified seeds and standardized production, they boost the production. And this cause indeed constant land use was increasing, but then the price dropped down and making less appealing for market to the indigenous community in the Andes from Quechua and the Aymara in the Altiplano. So there were several studies. One you can find in the references about it's of Bellemare et al. 2018. She actually studied that farmers are still in the Altiplano. They're still benefiting from this market access that this boom created. But indeed, this changed also a bit the way that they were looking at quinoa from a very important crop for self-consumption to something that actually, I can market it. And new farmers went to the area just to market it. Decoupling, creating dichotomy between what is the meaning of the quinoa for the local communities, within the community as a collective knowledge, as a symbolic common, and that transform in a commodity. So from this graph it seems that nothing changed from the beginning, like the prices stay the same, and more or less the farmers in the Altiplano, they producing this similar quantity, as they cannot really extend the land because of labor conditions are very hard. But what changed radically is the identity that they had about the quinoa. So we enter from this perspective to better understand how quinoa shaped the identity of the place in the Altiplano, in Quechua and Aymara communities. Where in the region of Puno. So here the card of Peru, and this area in red is the region of Puno, and this is blue is the Titicaca Lake. This is a beautiful landscape view of this traditional landscape that are cultivated with colorful quinoa. And yeah, the FAO was not happy enough thing with the International Year of Quinoa. They also registered this landscape as a global important cultural heritage system, GIAHS. And Altieri actually is a very famous researcher of agroecology. He's from Chile, works in Berkeley University in the US. And he described this landscape that has certain characteristics. And this indeed was a mainly top-down approach to try to create global awareness about the importance of this landscape. And as farmers were not able really to compete with the more industrial farmers in the area, they could indeed create a stronger tourism activity related to their culture. On the other hand, they were not considering that this culture, it was changing slowly, according also to this shift that there was between having a landscape that is cultivated with quinoa because it's something that is part of our culture, and that is coming something that is actually becoming a commodity, and is decoupling from the meaning of having a landscape which is important because there is a strong culture, and then you can do tourism. On the other hand, yeah, these landscapes are still working very well to achieve food security in this area, but still the challenge remains to better understand and frame what is the value, the identity of quinoa for single farmers and the community. So I gave you the broader picture to land, I hope you gently, on the what are the meaning of the quinoa concerning the identity in the Altiplano, in the region in Puno in Peru. So I really recommend you to watch this video. It's a very short video, and is made by very great NGOs I was able to work with for my PhD last year during my fieldwork. And the NGO is called ADRA, and they made a cooperative of farmers, which means that farmers can produce their quinoa. They can choose actually the varieties that they want to produce, and they can bring this in a transformation plant that is managed by the cooperative and the NGO. This is in the region of Puno, is a municipality called Caminaca, close to Juliaca. So then you can find this place on the map, and this is a very traditional way of producing quinoa, mainly by hand, without using tractors, without using fertilizers. Really an agroecological approach. And these are Quechua communities at 3,900, 4,000 meters, and they're keeping all these varieties of quinoa, and NGOs is maintaining this tradition. This video make a little summary of what happened with this project that NGO ran for these last 4 years, because then the problem is that is from 2020 this project doesn't have any fund anymore, and so that will be the next challenge for these NGOs, to find new funds to allow these farmers to sell the quinoa in this way. Just a very side activities, but can still be profitable, and a nice challenge for them to keep this diversity and also to sell it. So I really recommend you to watch this video. It's very short, but at least you can see also the landscape and can give a better glance of how farmers are working there. Passing from quinoa production, then we go to something that was traditional, and is still very traditional, and it's related to this quinoa identity the farmer have. This is a very, very interesting video. It was pretty difficult to find, but it shows how quinoa is processed for self-consumption. And this recipe called quispino, which is a kind of bread, but very soft, made out of quinoa, flour, and cal, with this very traditional oven of terracotta that they have. And there was a traditional way of consuming quinoa, and also it has a very strong cultural meaning and also identity related, because in the day of San João, which is in June, they come together with different communities, and they take this quispino and they make the flour and they mix it with water with the cal, and they create little shapes of something that they would like for the future, and then they cooked it together in the oven, and then they celebrate it and then they eat it. This tradition, it was completely disappearing in most of the community, Quechua and Aymara, in the Altiplano, because of the disconnection that there was between these farmers and their identity, and the possibility to have other food that people are consuming in the cities. You can have more information about it in the article, in the references, but what I would like to share is this very interesting meeting I had with an anthropologist in the University of Puno, and the fact that he was telling me that this tradition was completely disappearing since the last 10 years, because of the possibility of farmers to buy very easy food to cook, and that requires less energy, less food, like for instance rice. They were buying rice or pasta, which cooks very much quick than quinoa, and quinoa has sometimes some varieties has a high content of saponin, which is something that is not really appealing to eat. And for this reason they were decoupling the sense of this tradition and preferring food that was actually taking less time and less energy to be cooked. So what these anthropologists did in Puno is to promote this day of San Joao in June, to invite communities to bring back this tradition and cook all together and make these little figures with this bread, hoping for something in the future. Yeah, so that was the idea that the quinoa had, why this was so important and why it was so important for the community, and also to the identity of these communities. But this changed together with the fact that quinoa was suddenly everywhere in the world, and there was access to market for that. And we go for the next slide. You can see Virgilio Martinez, another way of processing this quinoa, in this article from the New York Times, telling how he is creating these beautiful dishes, landscape dishes, also with quinoa that he collected at 4,000 meters. So he is actually now the owner of this tradition and selling this in his restaurant in Lima, and which is very different from Quispino indeed. And there is a complete shift from a very traditional way of producing it and processing and consuming it and making collective events to produce it, to something that is much more market related. There was just a little parenthesis to show you that. And so let's come back to quinoa and identity. I really like this diagram that I adapted from Nielsen and Pincus et al. 2010, and it shows a bit how identity is the crucial point of different elements that we're going to speak about. So first, it shows how the identity is this kind of pyramid and is built up upon the dependency that farmers have. So for instance, dependency of food security, of eating, on cultivating land. And then this pyramid of identity is built up a community that shares seeds, a community that shares knowledge, that have tradition, have a culture. And the pyramid has these 4 axes which show different sphere of identity. So you have the individual, which is related mainly to the individual choices that people made for respecting or not their culture. Then you have the physical, more related to the environment that they work with. Then you have the social, which is the organization that you're working with. What is your structure? Is a family agriculture? Is an association? And then you have the collective. So the collective values and symbolic common that you have within your community. All these elements build the identity of a farmer. It's a simplified diagram, but it really helped to frame this very wide concept of crop and identity. And I really recommend you to read this very nice paper of NGO and Barklacic, 2013. I hope I pronounced it well, but you can find in the references. And they made a very nice study, tried to understand identity using visual research methods that we are going to see in the next slide. To dependency and dependency, all of the 3 they mentioned field. So the quinoa field, because it was the main crops in these 3 villages. And so that's very interesting how dependency can be something extremely specific and to a crop, to cultivating it, while identity, it has a deeper meaning of it, not only on cultivation but also on ancestor and nature and relation with nature and culture. The third one is community, and it shows mainly the places where people were meeting, like in the case of Piluani, this house, or this beautiful arena in Rinconada. In Huancarani, which is a very more traditional system, they had even shared plots of land in which they were cultivating different varieties of quinoa. So there was a very strong also identity in the community of working together, not only speaking and planning together. I show you this picture and I try to describe it. If you want to know more about visual research methods, which I really appreciate to try to understand more about identity, I really recommend you to have a look at these Rose 2016. You can find the reference. It's a very nice book about introducing visual research methods, and this is a circle I reproduce to better frame also my understanding of the picture and see what's in there, and to better read what the farmers wanted to place in the picture. By walking with farmers, I also took notes about when I was taking the picture from them, and then I was showing the picture again, and then I was asking, okay, are you happy with the picture? What do you see in the picture? Can you explain to me? And this was really creating a strong relation also between the landscape, the quinoa, and their identity and dependency and sense of community. And let's just read some quotes to better understand this. So let's start with identity. So as I said before, there was a strong relation with the ancestor, and or the farmers in the village in Piluani said, I've been living a cultivator under these hills, and my sons will continue after me. So there is also an identity that I know that this will continue, and my son will also continue to cultivate quinoa. And and also the ancestor that also we mentioned before. As we move to place dependency, there it's very interesting to speak about biocultural heritage. So here is very specific to quinoa. Quinoa is our main source of livelihood. The seeds come from the most beautiful and healthy, blessed plants. These are words that farmers said about it, creating this connection not only with something that is needed to produce, to eat, to process, like with the quispino, but actually in the now got a market value. But still, this is, for this farmer, was something that was still related to something blessed from the cosmovision and from the strong identity that we saw before with the ancestor. If you continue, they still speak about the local beliefs here, that there are special days to work the land and days in which you should not touch it, when there is full moon. These are beliefs connected to the cosmovision. And so again, we have a sense of dependency which is strongly connected to identity and quinoa, and there is this need of constant conversation with nature, and it seems like still very strong, even though quinoa have developed this second value or identity related to market. If we pass to sense of community, let's hear some rituals. So our meetings take place here in a circle. Before we start, we always give something to the herd. This is a very common practice before starting any meeting. Then the leader that is leading the meeting just gives some food or drink, or most of the time it's Coca-Cola, to the ground, to the herd, saying thank you. And this takes always place if it's a meeting to speak about what we're going to cultivate, how, which species, or if it's a meeting simply, okay, we have this quinoa store, to whom we're going to sell it and why and how. And so this step first is very important still. And also very interesting about common space, it's about this little house that was before in Piluani that I show you. They meet there to share their seeds. And this is still continue to keep in the diversity that they have alive. Walking of farmers, you saw that there were several things that now farmers are trying in order to find the balance of the quinoa identity between something very related to traditional way of farming and something that now is opening up to global market. One instrument that I'm studying is a collective governance instruments called the marca colectiva, or in English collective trademark, which is something to use to recognize mainly way of cultivating, processing and selling. And the interesting things about this matter is that it's a bottom-up approach, which means that farmers can decide actually what is the meaning of this marca colectiva and what they would like to associate to it. So which kind of practices, where, which places, and how I want to produce it, how I want to process it, which percentage I want to be sure to sell to the market and other to actually have here in the village or in the community. And I'm currently working on it, and there are also other organizations like AMPE, which I invite you to look on Google, which is a very nice organization that works on participatory guarantee systems, which are different way of protecting, registering this traditional food, and to both develop a local and global market, trying exactly to find the balance that we were speaking before. So I brought you to this trip to Peru to share my understood so far between quinoa and I made a short summary here with the pictures of the lecture. So first we see the way of producing it, the traditional one, of the very nice video that I really invite you to see. And then we see how this traditional way of producing is also a way of processing with the quispino. But we see that in the same time there was a quinoa boom, which create a new line, and the quinoa also developed a very strong market meaning, a market identity that transform in a mainstream product for global consumers. So here we have Virgilio making his fancy dish for Lima restaurants. So by this summary, I just want to show my points in which the quinoa identity is now looking for balance between a traditional crops cultivated in an agroecological way with thousands of varieties at more than 3,900 meters in the Altiplano of Peru. So keeping this culture strong and this identity strong, and also finding the balance between this culture and the fact that quinoa is a global commodity now, and so far is cultivated and eaten all around the world. And now there are projects and new way to find this balance of this identity between market and tradition. And I hope that I give you a better glance of this issue, looking at this triangle and the community, dependency and identity that create this structure that still feels very, very strong, and that is still looking for these solutions for balance. One can be the collective trademark, indeed, but there will be also other ways that probably will come with bottom-up approach, probably, and with more studies that will come. Hopefully next year in June I will go back, and I will have the possibility to play role-playing games, so to go further understanding this value that these commons have, quinoa as a symbolic common for these communities, and how to find this balance between traditional crop and culture and market value. So hopefully I will be able to go, and if you're a master student looking for a thesis for next year, it will be probably in June 2021. Just let and thank you very much I put a picture only at the end. I prefer just to register the lecture. So yeah, if you meet me at the market, just say hi. And if you have any questions or if you want more information or literature or references, or if you're interested to do a thesis about participatory games and participatory event or workshop, just send me an email, federico.andreotti@vur.nl, and all the references, they just a taste. If you want more, just send me an email, and I can send you more material, or if you have a specific question, just send me an email. So thanks very much for your attention, and I hope you the best to stay safe, and good luck with the course. Thank you very much. Bye bye.